Welcome into our side of addiction. I'm Amanda Bork. Let's go. Welcome in. Today's topic: how to build a supportive environment at home. This is relevant whether our loved one with an addiction, whether they're in recovery or active using. What the statistics show us is that the environment that they reside in or spend the most time around is top influential factor as to whether or not they'll relapse and also whether or not they will go and get help for their addiction. Statistically, about maximum 40% of people have a genetic predisposition toward addiction. What we do know is that the factor that overrides that, the factor that can determine whether or not that switch is on or off, the factor that with that 60% that don't have the genetic predisposition, environment can create addiction in people who don't have it genetically. Environment is the number one factor determining whether or not someone will have an addiction. And that's what we're going to talk about today. How do we create this supportive environment that's conducive with recovery? As the family members, the loved ones of addicts, this can be a little confronting. Oh, what do you mean? What's wrong with my house? What are you trying to say? I'm a bad parent? Or I didn't do right by my child? Or I don't keep a safe home? Those defense mechanisms, they go up. Fire alarms, ruffled feathers, and I get it. No one is saying that, and I will never shame or blame. What my role is always going to be is to shine light, to create awareness, to have these open discussions and converse with each other so that we are enlightened about what's actually influential, what's not helpful, what's harmful. The only way we're really going to know is if we talk about the tough topics that might make our defense shields go up, that might ruffle our feathers. And that's okay, because sometimes we got to ruffle feathers, okay? You got to pluck the feathers to get to eat the chicken, whatever that saying is. Is that a saying or did I make it up? Who knows? But environment matters. And I want you to hyperfixate on the fact that environment is going to be the number one controller for you. When we love an addict, it spirals. It's very much out of our hands, out of our control. And we desperately try to grasp at some sort of control. Usually we're doing this in the wrong spaces, okay? The top space we can focus on and we can influence and change is going to be environment. Obviously, you can't alter your loved one's environment if they're away from you, but the environment that you participate in, the one that you're able to influence or curate, that's the one we're going to talk about today. Our home is supposed to be a safe space where we spend our time, work, school, with our network. Those spaces should always feel safe, calm, comforting, and also supportive. That's the biggest thing we want to highlight. They should feel supportive. And if environment is the number one factor that determines addiction, we have to look at where our loved ones, our addicts, came from or are coming from. Usually, it's a stressful place. It's a traumatic, chaotic place. Maybe addiction was present, maybe it wasn't, but it was a scary, traumatic place. And this can also include space for assistance because mental health disorders are also heavily linked to addiction, either prior or post. So perhaps the person didn't have any space to share something was going on, and or maybe the family didn't discuss mental health or shunned it or shut it down every time it did surface. And this would have left the individual in a difficult environment because they weren't able to get the help that they needed for their mental health. So that could have led them to self-medicate. That could also be an option as well. Not blaming environment. We aren't blaming anything that was done or wasn't done, but we have to bring that awareness. We want to make sure that they don't have this fear, this anxiety, or this dysfunction that maybe they're accustomed to or have come from. Particularly if it's in our control of altering, we want to make sure that we are altering it. The main objective is always going to be to create an environment that supports recovery and any activities linked to recovery, and also an environment that's going to protect your well-being. You are, doesn't feel like it, but you are a priority in this, and we want to always make sure that you feel safe, you feel comfortable. Your house isn't filled with chaos or turbulence or dysfunction. You also need to make sure that you feel good. Environment. It plays a critical role in recovery, particularly early recovery. I always consider early recovery to be the first year and a half, but definitely the first year for sure. When our loved ones are in that first year, year and a half of recovery, they're most sensitive to a relapse. Most prone to relapse is that first year. And we'll see some substances, especially opioids. The relapse rate in the first year goes up to 92% of people will relapse in the first 12 months. Extremely high. And a large majority of that is linked to environment. They're sensitive to stress. They're easy to get overwhelmed. They're highly vulnerable to any cues or triggers. And of course, as you know, when we're developing new skills, because that's what our addicts are doing, they're developing skills and they're trying to learn how to implement them, we're sensitive to that. We're sensitive to practicing it, building our confidence, but also feedback. If I'm not being supported in my environment, and that's with your family, your spouse, your friends, I'm more likely to abandon any kind of changes that I'm trying to implement. If I go into my family and I share, hey, I'm practicing my communication skills, I'm taking a course, I'm trying to do better at speaking, and it's met with ridicule or laughs or making them the joke, even if you think, oh, it's just a joke, relax, it's not a big deal, it's not really. The intention behind most jokes is 50% real. So anytime someone jokes about something, I always assume that at least 50% of what you're saying is real, and you're just wrapping it up as a joke so that you don't get any repercussions for saying whatever you want to say. It's like a passive aggressive way to say something. Our environment absolutely dictates how successful we are or not going to be, especially during something new. And if we put our addicts in this situation of not supporting them, they're going to be faced with a choice. Stay here in this environment, not be supported, be a joke, be the butt of everyone's joke, and eventually abandon my thing, or leave and continue on my thing alone. That's basically where we're asking them to choose between us and not having a future, or being alone and having some shot at a future. I don't want anyone to have to choose that. I also don't want you to be on the other end of that decision, which is why we have to highlight how important environment actually is. And having a supportive home, a safe environment, does not mean it's perfect. It's not meaning you're hitting a home run every single time you're up at bat. All we want to do is create stability and productivity. And of course, predictability. The only way this house is going to be stable and safe and secure and calm is if it is one that's predictable. What are some ways we can start doing this? Well, the first thing would be creating some structure and routines. This is going to help reduce decision fatigue, help us regulate our mood, our sleep. It's going to give us that space of predictability. On top of that, it's also going to lower our stress levels, our cortisol. We're going to bring it on down and reduce our stress. What exactly are you talking about? So, give me some examples of what that looks like. What do you mean? That could be regular sleep patterns. We wake up at 8 a.m. in this house. We go to bed at 10 p.m. in this house. Whatever your schedule is, having it very consistent. Maybe consistent meal times. We eat dinner at 6, whatever your breakfast at 10. We want to make sure that everyone has responsibilities. I take out the trash, you do dishes, whatever your responsibilities are. We want to make sure they're consistent and everyone is equally participating. Especially, I know a lot of people allow their addicts to live at home, and the addicts never contribute to the home at all if they're in active use. Never pay bills, never buy food, don't kick in for utilities, surely aren't helping around the house. If they do help, it's because they're going to ask you for money. And so they're going to do a little something to appease you so they can ask you for a favor. But they're not going to be consistent. What we want to ensure is that everyone is participating consistently. And maybe we do some check-ins. Depending on how your family is run or how your house environment is run, do we check in with each other? Hey, just letting you know, dinner is still going to be at 6 p.m. tonight. Whatever it is. But checking in with each other. How are we doing? Is there any way I can assist you in your goals for the day? We want to make sure we're checking in with each other. That structure, that vigilance, that communication is going to create this space of safety, because we're not going to feel safe without it. No one's left to guess what's going on. Are we having dinner? If we are, what time is it? Yesterday was 5. Tonight it's 9. What time does everyone going to bed. Sometimes everybody's up at 6, sometimes they're up at 10. There's no predictability. And this is not about control. We want to make sure we're structuring with routine. The next way we can start implementing this is minimizing triggers in the home. One of the biggest things I hear from my clients is they're the ones with the addiction. They're the ones who need to stop using, not me. I don't have a problem. I can have a beer. I can smoke a joint. I'm not obsessive about it. I can control myself. I'm not going to change my lifestyle for them. They need to learn how to control themselves. Which I get, and that's so valid. And, say we have a loved one with diabetes. I honestly am not going to quit sugar. That is your thing, but I'm going to still eat my bread. I'm going to still have my Lindt chocolate. Oh my God. I have to have Lindt chocolate. It's so delicious. I'm going to be having my treats. And you're going to be over there regulating yourself, monitoring your blood sugar. And I really understand that perspective and point of view. However, if you've ever been around a diabetic, you know that some of them can control themselves better than others. For some of them, having sweets in the house is not a big deal, and they can refrain or they can get their sugar-free options and they're happy. Other people are too tempted if it's in the house. I used to work with this woman. She was a diabetic, and we worked all employees. Whenever it was their birthday, there would be a cake. It was a huge place, tons of employees. There was constantly birthdays, always cake, or someone bringing in some kind of dessert and leaving it in the kitchen. This lady could not control herself around sweets. Every single birthday, she would never skip cake, ever. She was constantly eating cake, constantly having the sweets in the kitchen. And I asked her one time, I said, aren't you diabetic? And she said, yeah, but I'll just give myself a shot. It was too tempting for her. And I want us to understand that it's not necessarily about willpower. We're different. Some people, sure, can handle certain temptations while others cannot. Going back to my Lindt chocolate, I met a lady and we were bonding over our love for those chocolate balls. And she said, I cannot keep them in the house because I'll eat the whole bag. I love them. They're my favorite chocolate. But I cannot control myself if it's in the house. That's just how some of us are. It's not about willpower. Our addicts, even if they're in recovery or not in recovery, having certain things around them is enough of a temptation for them to go off onto the deep end or go off on a bender or have a relapse. It really is a delicate situation. And while I can straddle both sides of it, because I get it, I also get that addiction is life-threatening. And if we love our addicts as much as we say we do, if we genuinely want them to get help, if we genuinely want to be supportive of that, our actions have to reflect that. Our actions have to be the speaker of that support. I can't tell you, go to rehab, please get clean, and then have you come out of rehab, come back into my home, and then drink a beer on the couch in front of you. It doesn't align. We have to get clear with ourselves on what our message is. Because if there's a conflict, the default is always going to be your actions. Your addict is not going to feel supported by you. They're going to feel as though maybe you're mocking them or rubbing something in their face. They're going to feel as though maybe you're manipulating them into relapsing. And let me tell you, that happens a lot with family members. They do sabotage recovery of their loved ones. We're not going to talk about that today. I'll do another episode on that. But that's very common. Why would you intentionally tempt someone who could die tonight if they left and used? We have to make sure our actions align. And guess what? Maybe you're going to be uncomfortable. Maybe you're going to have to sacrifice beer in the house or smoking a joint at night in the house. Maybe instead you're going to have to go for a walk, or I'm not going to say drive because we don't do that, but maybe you have to go for a walk or ride your bike somewhere. Maybe you're only going to get beer at the bar. Are you willing to also make changes? Because if we're asking our loved ones to get sober, they have to change every single thing about their lives. Every single thing about their lives has to change. And you can't change one or three things. We have to be in it with them. Minimizing these triggers is imperative to creating a environment that's conducive with sobriety or safety in general. Guess what? Alcohol and drugs in the house, man, that's a no-go zone. And you're going to have to sacrifice. Yep. You're going to have to sacrifice a little bit more. That's just the truth of it. We want to limit conflict, fighting, arguing, tiffs, back and forth, whatever you want to call it. We want to minimize that. We want to keep the stress very low, reducing stress, reducing panic or rushing if we can. Also being mindful of what we're consuming as far as media. This sometimes goes unnoticed or gets belittled. And even addicts themselves might belittle it initially, but then they'll eventually understand shows, movies, music, any other things like that are conducive or supportive of substance use or addiction. They can trigger a relapse through triggers, or through that causes a trigger that can create a relapse. There we go. I'll get it. And it's interesting because I don't think we fully grasp it as the loved ones. I facilitate meetings at a rehab, and we were just talking about what we're consuming and shows, and I love the show Breaking Bad and the spinoff. What is it? Somebody Call Saul? Sal? Better Call Sal. Yeah, great show. I love Breaking Bad. Who doesn't? And they were like, well, you said not to support drug shows. And then I responded, well, it's not that bad. And the whole room gasped. And I looked around and their faces were like, are you kidding me? Breaking Bad? The whole show is about drugs, making them, selling them, murders. And then I realized, oh, wait, it is that bad. Hold on. Okay, let me take it back. Okay, pretend I didn't say it. Sometimes we can diminish certain things because for us, it really maybe isn't that bad or isn't that deep. And partially because we aren't so emotionally tied to addiction or substances the way an addict would be. So for me, I would say, oh yeah, I mean, it's a great show. Yes, it's about drugs and stuff, but I'm not triggered by it, so I don't think it's a big deal. But for them, that is a huge fantasy trigger. We want to just take a little bit of an inventory on what kind of music do we listen to, or do we have a show we watch at night? What is the subject matter of these things, of our media? That's important. And making sure the house is structured. Again, this all minimizes our triggers and reduces strain that's just absolutely unnecessary. When we reduce that strain, reduce the chaos and dysfunction, this can help our addicts help their brains heal faster, because it takes 14 months for the brain to start going back to regular function, and a full 2 years for the brain to completely heal after addiction. And creating this environment that's calm helps support their brain to heal. Keeping substances out of shared spaces. Yes, being mindful of our emotional triggers for ourselves, our tone when we're speaking, making sure that we're creating this transitional day that flows. And we don't have to talk about heavy topics. We don't have to talk about stressful things. I know it's an element of life and you can't avoid certain topics, but I would say at least as long as possible, not bear any extra weight on our addicts. They don't need any extra weight on their shoulders while they're trying to figure out how to stabilize. At the rehab where I do meetings, I've heard of people calling back home and having their spouses say, the air conditioning is broke, the yard needs mowing, and I'm so stressed out, and something's wrong with my car. I don't know what's going on with the car. And the addict leaves that conversation feeling like they are a bad person and they should not be at rehab. They should be home tending to these issues. They should be supporting their spouse by being home and taking care of whatever needs to get cared for. By offloading, maybe it feels good because you need to offload, but all you're doing is diverting your stress and tension onto someone who's got enough stress and tension at the moment. Can we be a little bit more reserved and pulled back? Maybe that means you're a little less supported right now. That's just what we're going to have to sacrifice. They don't need any extra baggage. So in what ways can we not get into that heavy stuff, not offload on them? That's part of supporting recovery and creating this environment. And remember, this sounds like a lot, feels like a lot, but the small changes that we make matter. And even if we're able to make 2 to 3 small changes in the environment, we can't do everything, but we can change a couple things. Amazing. Let's hyper focus. Gosh, I can't speak today. Sorry. I've already been speaking a lot today. So let's hyper focus on the things that we can change, and let's change those things. Let's go all in on it. Okay, moving on. Family agreements or house agreements. Having shared expectations. This doesn't necessarily mean rules or control, but we want to collaborate with each other. What are the expectations around sobriety in the home? What are going to be our norms for communication? What are the household responsibilities? How are the finances shared within the house? What does that look like? What about privacy and space? What does that look like? These are all imperative conversations that we have with the family unit and with our addicts, especially that privacy and space. They are going to need specific space to recalibrate themselves, maybe do some breathing exercises or go meditate. I know some people, they go outside with bare feet in the morning to get acquainted with the earth. Whatever they need to set the tone or to refocus or to regulate their emotions, we have to give them the space and privacy to do that. And again, mocking them, laughing at them, being sarcastic, making a joke, it's not supportive. If their thing is to go touch grass on bare feet at 6 o'clock in the morning and do a little there's no reason to make a joke about that. Give them their space. You don't also make sure you're not joining in on their moment. Give them their space to do their rituals and to focus for themselves. You can do your thing. You can focus and fixate for yourself, but we give them the space to grow. When we are having these conversations and coming to these agreements as a unit, it's going to help reduce power struggles, miscommunication, misunderstanding. It's really going to bring those things down and help eliminate a lot of the turmoil in the house. Because as a loved one, what should you expect as far as sobriety goes in this home? What does that look like? What is your game plan? How many meetings a week are you going to? What time are your meetings? Are you going to sober events? How often do you plan to do that? Do you have to do check-ins somewhere? What does your job look like? Your employment? We have to have full and thorough conversations so that you are informed. This is such an asset for you, because if you know exactly what to expect in their sobriety, you can clock when something is out of order. If they say, yes, you can expect me to go to 5 meetings a week. Once a week, I go with sober friends and we do an outside activity, and I'm working full time. And you notice those 5 times a week meetings taper down to maybe just once a week. They're not doing their sober activities out of the house with friends. Maybe they're calling into work. They got fired. Whenever anything changes, you're able to immediately see it and have conversations to reassess or reevaluate. Maybe they are slipping or they need some intervention in that moment, or whatever's going on. Because you have that clarity, you can then bring it to their attention when you see something different. Such a huge asset for us. And this is just clarity. We're not being resentful. We aren't being strict. We aren't controlling. We aren't making comments. Oh, 5 meetings a week? Oh, no. Oh, you're not going to a meeting again? No. Like that. That's not productive. We're not going to get anywhere with anyone by doing that little song and dance. That's not being supportive. Moving on. Boundaries. We talk about boundaries on here. It's one of my top favorite topics because it seems so nonchalant. Like, oh, just do boundaries. It's extremely difficult to implement. It's so uncomfortable to implement. And it's really difficult to reinforce. However, the reward is monumental. And that's just why I love boundaries. She's a little tricky. She seems like bland on the outside, but she's so complex on the inside. What does that look like at home? Boundaries, healthy home, healthy boundaries. Number 1 rule, no substances in the house. And that includes you and other family members, at least for that first year. I'm pretty sure all of us can suck something up for 1 year. They don't need to see it. They don't need to smell it. They don't need to be around it. Nothing in the house. And let me add, you might be thinking, oh, wow, there's this big movement on non-alcoholic now. They have non-alcoholic spirit type drinks and beers and this and that. How about I just have non-alcoholic beer to maintain my ritual at the end of the day? A non-alcoholic beer can be triggering because the non-alcoholic beer is going to mimic the experience of an alcoholic one. The bottle, the ritual, the taste, it mimics the real deal. And what happens with addiction is with a relapse particularly, they'll rationalize something. I've heard people, I wanted a beer, but I was trying to fight it. So I just thought, let's have a light beer, like low calorie beer. I was like, no, you didn't. He said, yeah, I did it. They rationalize in their heads, like even if low calorie, thinking it's less or better. That non-alcoholic can open up the floodgates. I want us to be clear on that. So not even the non-alcoholic, just don't do it. We don't need it. It's poisonous. We know that. Let's just let it go for a year. Another boundary in the home, being respectful with our communication. Like I said earlier, oh, you're not going to another meeting? Oh, what happened to your meeting? Like, that's not respectful communication. That's some resent, some anger, some attitude being thrown at somebody because the person who's throwing it can't sit in it or process it. So they're directing it at someone. Or they are too passive aggressive to have a genuine conversation. The issue with this is if our house has always functioned like that, the dysfunction is the normal function, it's going to be very difficult to change that. And it could be that some people in the house aren't willing to change. Maybe the mother is happy to not have any substance in the house, but the father's unwilling to give it up. What do you do then? That's difficult. And we can't control people. We can only have conversations with them and make requests, set boundaries. But ultimately, if the father wants to bring it in the house, there's nothing anyone can do about that. And that can be a little bit of a problem. If we're used to being aggressive or passive aggressive with each other or being sarcastic with these undertones, we actually don't know how to communicate in healthy ways. We don't know any other way to have a conversation. And I will say, as a side note, that's going to be your journey as the loved one of an addict, because we do have a journey and a process in this. There is work for us, and that's going to be part of our work. If that's present in the home or has been present, we have to find our way to also elevate through this experience. Okay, respectful communication. We want to uphold our routines. If dinner is at 6, maybe between 6 and 7, we give ourselves some space. We aren't making dinner at 9. Or if somebody's late, we aren't holding off dinner for them. They can eat separately. Like, we have our regiment, our routine, and we want to make sure we're following along with that. If it's unrealistic, let's have a group conversation about it and adjust. But as far as constantly switching it up, nobody knows if there's even going to be dinner tonight. That could be one too. Maybe there's no cooked dinner and everyone fends for themselves. We want to make sure we always have clarity around it. Having accountability. Everyone has their responsibilities and everyone's accountable for themselves. And also, with boundaries come consequence, natural, consistent consequences. If you are not participating in your responsibilities, what are the consequences of that? If you are not maintaining a consistent routine, what's the consequence? This is not punishment. We aren't punishing you for not going to 5 meetings. But what are the repercussions? There has to be some kind of recourse when they're not upholding their part of the deal. That's for sure. We aren't threatening anyone, but we want to make sure that everyone participates. The next little subject within this matter: how do we maintain balanced support while also allowing for independence? This can get a little murky, muddy, gray, blurred. It can be, some of us might have this tendency to overreach. Our loved one only went to 4 meetings instead of 5, and we start inserting ourselves into their business. We start overstepping. You are coming from a place of fear and allowing that fear to dictate your actions, and then allowing your stress to be transferred onto your loved one. And you're going to start stressing them out because you're stressed. They're going to feel your stress, which is totally understandable. So it's a very scary experience to love an addict. It's petrifying. And the second something changes or something slips, our first thought is they've relapsed. We go to the worst. They've relapsed, or my necklace is missing. They must have stole it and sold it for drugs. It's only because we've gone through these experiences that we've been conditioned to have these thoughts or responses. However, when in our home, when we're fixated on making it a safe environment for sobriety, we aren't overly injecting ourselves into their lives. We want to encourage them to have responsibility for themselves. We want to allow consequences. We want to express that we believe in them. We know that they are capable. They can figure it out. They can handle it. We want to empower them. Instead of taking away their power and trying to fix it for them, we want to give that back to them and allow them to figure it out. Just like a child, if you give a child a puzzle and you watch them try to figure out how to put the circle in the circle hole, how to put the square in the square hole, you let them fumble. You watch them. You know where it goes. It'll be very easy for you to accomplish this. And you don't running over there and adjusting that puzzle for them every single time. They're not going to learn anything. They're not going to build any skills or confidence in that matter. We want to let them fumble and figure it out. The same goes with our addicts. We have to allow them the space and grace to fumble, but to also figure it out. And we also want to give them the glory when they do figure it out. Because when your baby puts the round piece in the round hole, the square piece in the square hole, you clap and you say, "Yay, you're amazing, you did it." We want to do the same thing with our addicts. We want to cheer them on and encourage them to build up their confidence, and that helps to build up their independence. We can help them, but we aren't going to rescue them. If there's a situation going on, you can have a conversation. What's your strategy? What's your plan? What are you thinking? Can you offer some kind of assistance because you're not overrunning the plan or the strategy. You maybe can offer assistance, maybe not. Maybe they're going to suggest something and then you'll come in on a fraction of the suggestion. We can help, we can participate, but it has to be in a balanced way, and also in a way that ensures that they don't feel defeated. They don't feel like you just grabbed that square from their hand and jammed it in the square hole. Defeats the entire purpose of it. That's not supportive and that's not loving. When we are overly engaged in them, in their lives, it comes from a good place. Like, I get that. However, what actually is happening is we are stalling their growth, stunting it, if you will. We are creating resentment within them and also within ourselves. We are increasing dependence because we're taking away their autonomy. We're making it so they are now dependent on us to put that square in that square hole every single time. And you'll do it. And then one day you're going to be so mad that you have to do this again because they should know how to do it by now. They should have figured it out by now. How? You've never given them the opportunity to. So we're building dependent people when we act like that. And of course, number one, we're undermining their confidence, really diminishing them as a person, reducing their self-respect, self-esteem, and their confidence just in general. All of this is going to take practice because, look, I'm the first one to say when my sister was alive and in her addiction, if there was anything I could do to lessen her load, I would have gone running, sprinting like a Kenyan over to her to do it without a question. What needs to be done? Let's do it. Happily, we'll help you. At the time, I didn't realize how detrimental and unbalanced that was. Now I do. But when I was in the thick of it, all I was focused on was lessening her load, believing that somehow that was connected to her getting sober. I don't know why, but a lot of us believe that if we shelter or cover or rescue or offload for them, they will miraculously check into a rehab. I don't know, guys. I know you feel the same way, but it's genuine belief, or at least hope, that they'll have a little more space and clarity to realize that they have an addiction and then go get help. Never works that way, but I think all of us can attest to the fact that we will still die trying. we will die trying, because eventually it's going to work for one of us, and that'll be our proof. It won't, but we're still out there offloading baggage out there. What are some common barriers / misconceptions as it pertains to the environment factor for us? The first one, if I loosen structure or control, they will relapse. Kind of thinking that we have to be rigid in order to save them or prevent them from doing something. We think that this is actually in our control. What it tends to do is the opposite. It will actually increase the sense of desiring secrecy and increase rebellion. The more you push, the more they're going to pull away. The second one, if I set boundaries, I'll push them away. And that's the last thing I want to do. I need them up front, center, so I can monitor them and ensure that they stay alive. Boundaries don't push people away. boundaries assert what you are and are not willing to accept. And then the other person makes their choice. They're allowed to have freedom of choice. And you thinking that, or us thinking that, if I sacrifice myself for them, that's the better option because they have to be most comfortable. That's not the case. We have to ensure that we are safe and we are comfortable and we are level so that we can be of the best assistance to them, so that we can level up who we are and grow as individuals and become the best version of ourselves for this situation. If someone walks away because you set a boundary, it's because they're dysfunctional and they don't want to abide by this boundary, or they don't agree with it, they don't accept it, and they are choosing to walk away. They're allowed to choose that, and that's okay. Boundaries actually offer clear, concise communication, strengthen relationships, increase trust and safety. That's what our boundaries are doing. The third barrier/misconception: it's my job, my duty to keep them sober. And I think it feels like this for a lot of us. It feels like that is our role. My sister was an addict, so my duty as a good sister was to protect her or figure things out for her or make this easier for her. That was my mission. It's misguided. And it comes from a space of fear. Ultimately, that was not from love. That was from me not wanting her to die. She died anyways, and I never got anywhere with that. I could harp on myself and say, oh, well, I failed as a sister, or I didn't do my job. We cannot control other people. And we seem to understand this in most contexts in life, just in general. Yet when it comes to our loved ones with an addiction, it goes out the window and we are certain we can control them. It will be my only task in life to control them and to dictate that they get sober, dictate when they get sober, how they get sober. You have to get sober because I don't want to lose you. Completely understandable, but that's just not how it works. We can't control them and we can't control their addiction. The last one that I have: if I do relax, something bad will happen. Kind of ties into the last one, but when we're constantly being vigilant, we're not able to sustain that. That's not a long-term strategy. I always talk about this short-term strategy for long-term problems. It does not work. And we're trying to implement short-term for something that's long-term. You cannot control them. If something bad happens, it's not, I repeat, N-O-T, not on you. You couldn't control it, couldn't stop it, couldn't have changed it. It's not going to feel like that, but that's the truth. Just like right now, you can't control me. You can't tell me or dictate to me what I'm going to do tomorrow, how fast I drive my car, what I eat, how much I drink, how much water I drink. You can't control any of that. And you will stress yourself out to the bone thinking or trying to control that. You're supposed to find your space so that you can level up and be of the best service as possible. And that's all that your job is. It doesn't extend past that. Let's move on to your emotional state. It's going to be a challenge converting or assessing your environment to ensure that it's conducive with sobriety. And you're going to have a lot of emotions. It's not going to be easy. Of course, you're always afraid to hope, because how many times have you been let down? Afraid to relax, because how many times have you been called into a crisis? You're afraid to trust. Gosh, how many times have they lied to you, stolen from you, actually broken you? A lot. And maybe you're just exhausted by having to hold it all together. Constantly having to be the strong one, the one who sucks it up, the one who takes it on the chin, who hides and shields and shelters and whatever else you're doing out there. Your nervous system is wrecked. You also need stability, and this is why the environment, any changes that we make, are going to benefit you as well. The more calm and stable your environment, the more you're able to relax, your nervous system can calm, you can feel safe in your space. And this matters. You have to be able to find stability within the chaos to be of any service at all to anyone, including yourself. And stability is not about perfection. It's not about constantly being cheerful, always being optimistic, never having a conflict, keeping your mouth shut. It's not about that at all. It's not about being flawless. You have flawless skin, but you're not a flawless person, okay? Instead, it's about being a safe person, being an honest person, respectful person, and a predictable person. They know anytime this happens, you're going to respond by doing that every single time. Well, to the best of our abilities. We want to create that stability in those patterns. That's where we're going to find the healing. That's where the work really gets done. We are being honest and compassionate at the same time. Maybe working on that delivery a little, because we do have resentment in our hearts. And it's easy for that resentment to surface through the lips and snake out a little bit and bite the addict, because you would love for them to get a little bit of a bite. But we want to practice on our tone, our delivery, and how we present our honesty with compassion. Being flexible also is part of being structured, is flexible. It makes me think of those, have you seen those videos of New York, of the high rises? And they're designed to sway in the wind because they're so high, and I forget what the wind rating is, and to what degree they sway. But I've seen videos of those buildings swaying and creaking back and forth. It's supposed to be flexible. It's structurally sound. It's safe, but it's flexy. You can think about it in that way. We, instead of controlling, shift to being caring, pulling back the reins a little bit, maybe dropping the reins, and shift to being caring. And maybe we need a little practice on that, and that's fine. But how can we start shifting that for ourselves, and maybe shifting that for other people around us, so we can practice and get a little bit of momentum and confidence within that? so that we can eventually exercise that with our addicts. And we also want to be calm. Sometimes we might get that confused with being rigid, but we want to be calm. Stable, calm, doesn't have to be rigid, but we want to make sure that we're relaxed. This gives us space to make those mistakes or those missteps, but also to grow and support without being overbearing, also on ourselves. To sum it all up, we're creating a supportive environment, yes, for your addict, for your loved one, but also for yourself and your other family members, your other loved ones, because all of us deserve to be in an environment that is safe and calm and conducive with leveling up, with learning new skills, with elevating who we are. We're going to learn how to rebuild trust. Eventually, you will, and that takes a little time. We're going to reclaim safety. Addiction is very dangerous and scary and chaotic, and if that is present within your home, we're going to practice reclaiming a safety zone. You are supposed to be safe when you're home. We're going to shift from the old behavioral patterns to the new ones. Maybe that means no longer having a beer after work. Maybe that means not making a sarcastic remark to someone who's learning a new skill. We're going to start rewiring and changing and becoming better versions of ourselves. It's not easy. It's going to be messy. It's going to hurt. But eventually, whether your addict is in recovery or not, this is going to be imperative. This is the foundation for their recovery, is their environment. And I want to make sure that when our addicts think about a safe environment, one of the first 3 places they think of is you and or your home. And listen, that's all I got for you this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you on the next one. Hasta la vista.